Well, the main title of this video is Operation Saturation, because that's the image I want to plant in your mind. The goal is to end up with a culture saturated with this idea of risk management that's at the heart of my videos, to have everyone thinking through for themselves this central question. With the uncertainties and risks of climate change, is it wiser to oppose action or to demand it? Again and again, polls show that the uncertainty in climate science is what's been holding back the general public. This question fixes that by dodging the need for certainty. So there's your simple idea that may save the world, that we should be talking about risk instead of talking about certainty. The ultimate goal, of course, is to eliminate the possibility of that lower right-hand corner of the grid. In my assessment, as always, feel free to do your own, the situation is likely bad enough that getting us into column A is going to require massive action. The only way to make that massive action happen is to spread the demands out amongst everybody so that the demands for an individual are at a tolerable level. The only way to do that is policy changes, which restructure our energy economy. And the only way that's going to happen in time is if the people demand it from their policymakers. So the vision here is bringing about a wholesale change in the culture so that a policymaker can't turn around without having a clump of people in their face saying, "What are you, going to do about climate change?" Hence, Operation Saturation. Now, how do you go about saturating the culture? Well, you're already familiar with how videos can go viral. If we want this idea to go truly viral, culturally viral, to break out of the internet and enter into the mainstream, it helps to think in some detail about the nature of a real virus. A virus is an amazing thing. It has no resources of its own. Zip. All it has are instructions, a blueprint on how to make another copy of itself. So how can it cause an epidemic? It infects hosts, and it uses their resources, their experience, their contacts to use those instructions that it brought in and make many copies of itself. And those copies go on to infect others, where they do the same thing, multiplying again and again and again. The original virus doesn't need resources, just information, because it hijacks the resources of its hosts along the way. That's how this can work for us. That's how we can change the world without having a huge organization or a massive budget. You infect 10 people with the same motivation and information you have, and each of them passes it on to 10 more, and each of them passes it on to 10 more, and so on and so on. As I pointed out before, in just 5 steps of that process, that's over 100,000 people who've been involved. It's a little tough to talk about this without getting so wound up about the possibilities that I sound like I'm about to break into evil genius laughter. I mean, it's a long shot, but this could literally be the biggest, most pervasive PR campaign in the history of the world, with 0 initial resources and no organization. That is cool to think about. And it may be our only hope. I mean, that is besides the hope of hoping really hard that all those eggheads, military brass, and historians are wrong about the whole thing. Oops, our bad. So, if you're watching this, you've probably already been infected with the idea. What you do now is brainstorm, what resources do I have? What talents do I have? What contacts do I have that I can use to spread the idea? You guys have done an incredible job already, as I shared earlier with those numbers. Now, let's supersize it, shall we? In this amazingly interconnected world of communication, each of you has so much power. Let me back up that extraordinary claim with an illustration. Remember this kink in the graph caused by the story being featured on the Yahoo homepage? That single event, that decision by a single person who was in the right spot at Yahoo, had a huge effect. That event garnered 50,000 views for How It All Ends in a single day. Crap, this is the wrong graph. That single event, that decision by a single person who was in the right spot at Yahoo, had a huge effect. For example, on How It All Ends, that event garnered 50,000 views for the video How It All Ends in a single day. Fully 1/6 of this video's total views collected over 3 months came in that 24 hours. And that's what I want to highlight for you, the power of multipliers. People who are in a position to spread the word widely, like that one person at Yahoo. So if you find you are reinvigorated in wanting to spread the word, go beyond the injunction to simply forward the video to your friends and family. Think big, get creative, brainstorm ways to involve some multipliers and get them on board, even ones you don't know. Lobby people like celebrities, journalists, executives, elected officials, bloggers, vloggers, talk show hosts on TV and radio, charities, nonprofits, your favorite actors. Write that fan letter you never have saying, "I like and respect you so much, I want you to see this. Advocacy organizations, think tanks, lawmakers, musicians, experts you see quoted in articles about the topic, presidential candidates, producers, directors, authors, columnists, athletes, repost the videos on other video sharing sites or on dig.com or Reddit or Stumble, enter the videos into contests, borrow the arguments and make your own videos with your own spin and enter those into contests. According to whatarethey.waiting.for.com, the 5 biggest television political reporters during the presidential campaign have asked 3,000 questions of the presidential candidates, and only 6 of those questions have been on climate change. Change that. Saturate. Think big. I mean, just imagine if this got on Oprah. Bam! Mission of changing the culture accomplished. As you go about this, it might help to keep in mind what one teacher wrote to tell me. He said he thinks the videos have gone big because of something his students shared with him. They told him, quote, he asks us to look at the questions ourselves rather than shoving a bunch of facts down our throat, unquote. So if you refer people to the videos, maybe don't say, this guy is right, you better listen. Instead, ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Although at one point I almost took down the most terrifying video because it has a hole in the argument big enough to drive a Hummer through, I now acknowledge that it might in fact be more viral than How It All Ends, even though that one has a better argument. Anyway, since the most terrifying video now points pretty directly to How It All Ends and its expansion pack with the full argument, pick whichever video you think is more likely to spread and use that one. Here's another suggestion. Maybe use some of the verbal jiu-jitsu of the political marketing guru Frank Luntz. There's a link to an interesting program about him in the video description. He's the guy who single-handedly managed to change the term estate tax to death tax, oil drilling to energy exploration, and tax cuts to tax relief. Perhaps start talking about climate destabilization or climate chaos or something better that you come up with. I made up a word, manpalo, and now it gets 3,500 hits on Google. See what you can do. For some ideas, I've provided a link to a discussion on manpalo.org that's got lots of great phrases and taglines. Get the discussion away from the word consensus, because by some definitions, it will be simply impossible to get consensus in science, because you can always find someone who's going to disagree. And instead, talk about the overwhelming agreement in the scientific community. It's a stronger phrase, overwhelming agreement, and it can't be disproved, because no matter how many dissenting scientists the denialists can scare up, there's 144,000 members of AAAS who would vote the board members out on their ears if they made a radical statement that didn't have overwhelming agreement from the membership. And in fact, that's exactly what happened to the American Association of Petroleum Geologists.